Hello and welcome to the KFC Supercoach AFL podcast. I'm Al Payton. The buys are a distant memory and now we're in the run home looking towards Supercoach finals and the last few rounds and how we're going to try and finish our teams. That seems to be the main goal now and everybody's coming from slightly different directions, but we'll try and help out everybody as much as we can. And we've got a whole panel of experts to help us do that, including a very special guest, a cross-code sports star, which we'll get to very shortly. But Dan Batten, how did you fare in round 15 and how's your team looking? Are you finished and ready to go for the run home?
What a way to start. We've got Josh Layla on the line and we go with my team who struggled with the worst score of the round, 2-2-50 for Batten for Glory. It's going downhill the last few weeks. I said during the buys I'll be looking for round 15 because I'll get Fife back, get Grundy back, all those sorts of things. I ended up trading Fife last week, which ended up being a good play considering he was a laid out in round 15, but a lot of players struggled. I think me and Tim we're pretty gutted on Friday night when Bolton spat out a 40 when we traded him in over Dane Zorko many weeks ago, and that trade is just getting worse and worse by the week. Also not having Bont is a killer. And I didn't really have too many underperformers besides Shea Bolton and Tom Stewart. But just not a lot of big scores like your Bonts, Merritts. Don't have Jack Steele either. Avoided some of these guys like Jack Steele because of my round 14 buy situation earlier in the year, and then was hurt by the buy change with Richmond and West Coast being moved to round 13. But obviously that's in the past now, but ranked at about 7K now. So not sure I'll be able to climb my way back up to where I was, but hopefully we can at least hold ground.
And Dan Begala, the Supercoach investor, how did you go on the weekend? And are you closing on full primo?
Thanks, Al. Yeah, I've been close to primo. Did some very novelty trades through the buy to try and really fast track my ranking. So I'm into 772, which is really good. Got 1K. Pretty excited. Been here before, but I probably feel the most vulnerable I've ever been inside the top K. I've got one glaring issue, and that's at R2. I've currently got CCJ still, and I'm sort of really unsure how I'm going to close that gap and get someone like Brody. I didn't expect him to bounce back against Baby Grundy on the weekend and have 135, but first quarter I was preparing a lunch. It was my birthday weekend, had the barbecue firing, and looked at the stats. It was about 12 minutes in, and Grundy had 10 touches, 8 hit outs. He was on 45. And I thought, that ruined my afternoon, I think, here.
Yeah, well, Brody Grundy is something we can talk about. He's got a break even of 153 this week, so might drop a little bit of cash if you're one of those players who need to try and get him back in. But that's going to be a dilemma. I think Tim Mitchell's in that boat. Fortunately, we'll get to Tim in a sec. I'll just quickly run through my team. I hung on to Grundy through the buy, so I'm glad I did that. And he obviously helped me to a pretty good score on the weekend, 2,490. That's I have to do my season best. I think I'm up to 3,600. I was pretty happy. The only thing is, you can't get everything right, I guess. But a couple of really poor scores, which held me back. Tom Hawkins only the 60. He's been shocking since I brought him in 2 weeks ago. And Patrick Cripps, just the nightmare that doesn't end. I think he was on negative quarter time. I thought maybe if I give him one more week against the Crows, they tend to give up big scores against midfielders. But obviously it didn't happen for him. And did you see on the Fox last night, they reckon that goal that he kicked shouldn't have even been a goal. He ran about 35 metres.
Should have scored 55 instead.
Yeah, exactly. So thank goodness he at least got that. But he's probably my biggest headache, trying to figure out how I go forward from here. And the other thing that I kind of mucked up was the captaincy. I haven't had a good run on that the last couple of weeks. Last week, my C and VC both got in the 90s. This week I had the VC on Dusty and he got 94. So I thought I'll pass on him, and I was humming and ahhing who to make captain. And I went with Max Gawn, and fortunately he rallied a bit late in the game to at least get 100. But I had some much bigger scores that would have been much better choices. I did have Merritt. I did have Zorko, Jack McRae. In hindsight, it was a pretty obvious call. Jack Steele, all these guys. But as I said, can't really complain with a score like that. And some of the guys that have been causing me a few headaches, like Jordan Ridley's come good again, thank goodness. Joe Danaher, when I was on the verge of maybe trading him out, scores 112. So generally things are looking pretty good. And I've got 5 trades left. I didn't end up trading last week, and I'm still not 100% sure what I'm doing. I've still got Matt Flynn sitting on my bench in the ruck. So that's my obvious path to get some money. But then do I basically use my entire bank? I could turn Cripps into Bontempelli, but then it'd mean carrying a couple of other guys that I was hoping to upgrade. So we'll get to some of those issues maybe later in the show. But Tim Mitchell joining us as well. Tim, how's your team looking? I know you're also in the non-Zorko owners, so we won't dwell on that too much. But apart from that, did you have a good weekend?
I thought my weekend couldn't get worse after Thursday night, Al. Like, did everything humanly possible to avoid looking at Dane Zorko's score, and of course about 50 people tagged me in the 174 and his 12 score involvements and 12 tackles and everything else. Like, there hasn't been a run in KFC Supercoach like this, apart from Bont this year, like since Gary Ablett in about 2010. And that was halcyon Gary Ablett, his absolute best. Like, I don't know how Dane Zorko at 32 years of age, he's a guy that has averaged 95 to 105 his whole career, is suddenly averaging 160 every week. Like, one player has just about absolutely killed my year, and I thought it couldn't get much worse. And then Dan Batten, Moz, the two good players I had going on Sunday, messaged me a quarter time of the GWS Hawthorn game. How good is Flynn going? Can't believe I traded him out when Flynn was on 40. Flynn scored -5 for the next two quarters and was lucky to get 80. He then messaged me a quarter time of the Adelaide Carlton game when my captain was Rory Laird, because Rory Laird was on 60. Yeah. And then sure enough, Ed Curnow went and sat in Rory Laird's pocket for the rest of that game and kept him to about 49 points in the last three quarters. So Dan Batten or Dane Zorko, who am I angrier at? It's hard to say at this point of the week, but somehow made it to 23.54, which was a bit below par, lost a few hundred spots, and unfortunately outside the top 2K, so got a bit of work to do, and more than likely this week that I'll burn 2 trades, get Brodie Grundy back, and then run the gauntlet for the rest of the year with only a couple of trades left, depending on if we fall into another footy frenzy or not, and whether extra trades come as a result of that. But Al, I don't know why we're talking, because another man who scored, almost topped your score on the weekend, and you were... I don't know why you're whinging about a 24.90, but that's a whole other story. But Josh Laylaw, Melbourne Renegades, paceman, all-round KFC Supercoach good guy, has jumped on to join us as well. Josh, thanks for jumping onto the podcast this week, and well done on your score on the weekend, mate. I think you're into the top 5K and eyeing a good finish to the year.
Yeah, I am. You sent through a whole bunch of questions last night, which will paint a pretty tricky picture moving forward. But, certainly the last 7 or 8 weeks, I've been very lucky that I've set myself up, and the trades that I've made over the last 2 or 3 months have set me in really good stead. So I'm in a really strong position, but a bit like everyone, I think Dan said before that he felt a bit vulnerable. That's good, because I'm at about 5K and I'm looking to get up, and I think everyone feels like they're half a player or a player short of where they'd like to be. So hopefully that will make for an exciting finish, and hopefully there is a footy frenzy and some more trades, because that could really send the cat amongst the pigeons. Sorry, I didn't actually answer the question. What did I get this week? 24.73. Sounded very similar to Al, who got 24.90. Also had the VC on max, and then captain Rory Laird, and was pumped that he was on 60 at quarter time as well, and then flicked the game on and saw Ed Curnow right next to him, which was a bit disappointing. So left some points on the field there. Also had McRae, Merritt, who else did really well? Grundy, obviously. So, my side's in a relatively good spot. Impey was in my team last week, and I was sort of deciding to keep him, and then him getting injured was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because it sort of forced me to move on from him. And I was able, through the Madden and Briggs link, to bring Madden down onto my field. So he's sort of the last upgrade that I need at F6, with $2,000 in the bank. So that's not going to be happening anytime soon. But it should be interesting to see how Danger goes over the next couple of weeks and what I can get him in, if I get him in.
Now, Josh, you're not the only cricketer that's playing KFC Supercoach this season as well. Pretty competitive. And I know in the Athletes League that we threw together in pre-season, Cal Ferguson's one that jumped in that with a few of the other A-League boys. But tell us about the cricketers and who plays Supercoach and who else. Like Mike Hussey finished top 15 last year, and you had a pretty good finish last year as well. Who are the KFC Supercoach stars among the cricketers of Australia?
The Supercoach guy, I think there's a lot of guys that do sort of all sorts of AFL fantasy tops, but the ones that I know of that play in our league, I'm just looking at the top 5 here of our league. So I'm in first currently. Mike Hussey's in second. Warney from AFL Fantasy is sitting in third. He's in our league as well. Ben Rohrer, who former Sydney Thunder and Melbourne Renegades player, is in fourth. And Trent Copeland, another blue bagger, is in fifth. So plenty of cricketers in the top there. We've also got Damien Fleming's in there, floating in about ninth place. Who else is in this league? Adam Voges, former Australian player, averages 60-odd in Test cricket. Now the Perth Scorchers coach is also in there. And Callum Ferguson, who you mentioned, is second last, big Ferg. But of total points alone, I think we got 5 guys in the top 5,000. So Ben Rohrer's 2,300, Mike Hussey's 4,000th. I'm about 4,800, and Damien Fleming is just about 10 places behind me. So plenty of cricketers taking their Supercoach, the AFL Supercoach, very seriously. And we're getting to the point where there's enough of us now in this league that we're in the, do we win the league or do we keep grinding for our overall ranking? That's how sort of hardcore we are.
And how much banter is there in that group?
There's plenty of bragging rights going around, but because we're sort of half caught between going for overall and going for league wins, I think the person who knows that they won the league is probably the person who pulled out of the overall race the earliest. So it's nice to get the cash and nice to get the banter, but I think we're all trying to get to top 15 like Mike Hussey was last year, and he's doing well again.
Have you guys been playing for a while? And if you have, who's generally the best performed player out of all the cricketers? And do you guys all play the SC BBL as well?
Not everyone plays the BBL. I don't, so I can't. I dabble. I always get in there to see how expensive I am and see whether I'm worth any value or not. But I get so busy during that period that I'm the guy that doesn't make the trades and that brings the league average down, all that kind of stuff. So and then you become the person that gets the mickey taken out of them because they're actually playing. They're last in the league. So, but yeah, pretty seriously. So the guys I mentioned have all been pretty good for a while. Huss is the one, I guess, since he stopped playing Big Bash, looks like he's taken his AFL Supercoach to another level. But Ben Rohrer, myself, Copes, Damien Fleming is flying the last 2 years. I don't know if he's in the pocket of one of you boys, but Fleming is sort of middling in our league, and the last 2 years he's really turned it on as well. So a lot of guys that have been good for a while and some that are getting better.
I reckon if he was talking to us, Josh, he'd be going backwards, not forwards. So
I think you said top 2,000. Is that what you said, Tim? That's pretty good.
Yeah, I set a high bar. Definitely beating Begala, which I was on track to do until a couple of weeks ago. But Begala's got me, I think, now. So I'm going to have to find it. I need Danger to score a couple of 200s or something to get me back there. So speaking of Danger, Josh, like you were talking about your F6 position and what you're going to do with that. Like he's an interesting talking point now because he's come back in reasonable touch. I think a 75 or so, and then a couple of 90s as well, which a lot of those points have come, I don't know, in bursts, as he quite often does, and his price is just about bottomed out as well. Is Danger the player that you're eyeing for that last position in your forward line? And I guess we can probably go around the panel as well and give our thoughts on whether Danger has proven himself to be that must-have that we all thought.
I personally think that he is, though I don't like saying it. So the last few years I've preferred to roll without him and sort of threw caution to the wind. And it inevitably, as the guy who hasn't had him, it hasn't worked out very well. So it's so tricky. Because I'm inclined to generally not to pick him, and because I like playing the pod game, and the only way I'm going to climb the rankings is through pods, not through picking up Danger. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think he's going to be too good a value. And this year, cash generation's hard to come by. It's hard to, he's going to be high 400s, if not just on 500,000. So I think you sort of do have to. But I can completely appreciate anyone that's going the other way. What about you guys?
What do you guys like? Begala, you've gone the other way, haven't you? So you got Tom Hawkins in, and have you got a spot left still in your forward line for Danger, or what have you done there? Did you end up going impy to Danger like I was forced to do?
Yeah, so last Thursday, I think the news was starting to leak onto Twitter, and I was sort of frenetically trying to ascertain whether it was correct, but they were suggesting that Impey had broken his ankle. And I thought, well, if that's anything near what's happened, I need to get rid of him ASAP. And I had enough money from the week before because I actually brought in Ronnie Briggs, had Briggs at F8, and he was really quite impressive 2 weeks in a row. I really enjoyed his growth as a player, and I think he might squeeze Mumford out hopefully again this week. But I brought him in, and in doing so, I used Waterman to do that, and I created about 100K worth of liquidity, which was absolutely perfect to go from Impey to Danger with no concerns. So I was pretty much under time pressure. The Geelong game was kicking off at 7:20, I think it was, or 7:30. I had to make a call. I've always wanted Danger. I feel like you get stuck in a short squeeze when you don't have him because he can pump out those monster scores. And like the last 2 weeks, he's had plenty of the footy. He's run out of puff late, but his kicking by foot has been probably nowhere near his not so lofty standards, but nowhere near. Like he kicked the first 3 kicks on the full almost. So taking that out of his score, last week he kicked 0 goals 3. He boots those, he gets 125. Same thing happens against Brisbane. He's the only shining light having a crack. So for me, from here to the end, I think he'll be a top 3 to 4 forward. At 495K, it's the epitome of arbitrage. I think everyone needs to have him. But the issue I had is because I made such a rushed decision, I could have moved Waitman for a 102K ruck forward or mid forward and then gone Impey to Grundy and CCJ to F6 and like waited till their prices merged a bit closer. So that's my biggest regret. And I'm a bit nervous. Grundy puts 60 points on CCJ week in, week out. Danger is not putting points 60 plus week in, week out on my F6. It's not happening. Danger is not as dangerous as you would think, whereas Grundy gives me literally every weekend from now on, I'm going to go in so nervous watching CCJ Thursday night against Richmond. Please kick 4 and please get 110 just to mitigate some sort of points loss.
Yeah, playing the Suns on Thursday night at Richmond, so hopefully they score a couple more goals than they did last week, and CCJ might get on the end of a couple. I mean, really, for him to score nearly 70 points in how bad they played, and didn't see a heap of him in that game either. So you sort of take that and move on, really. But yeah, I mean, I'm stuck in this whole Danger conundrum, Tim. To answer your question, that I'm about 30K off being able to afford to get Neil and Dangerfield in. And so I'm sort of like, which one do I want? And I think at the moment, at about halftime in that Geelong game, I was like, right, Danger, he's got to come in. But then he sort of tailed off a bit. And watching Lachie Neale, like he didn't score 100, it was just under, but he was copping a really heavy tag from Mark O'Connor. He looked like he copped a pretty serious shoulder injury at one stage and was off the ground for a little while and came back on. And after his 150 the week before, if that sort of is going to be his toughest game and he still scores 98 or something, I can see him scoring some really big scores. And the Lions have a really great run home. They play, I haven't got it in front of me, but they play a lot of the teams towards the bottom end of the ladder. They're in great form. I think they're going to have some good wins. So I think I probably want him. And then that means, so if the Cripps will become him, will become Lachie Neale probably this week, because I think Brisbane play Adelaide this week, I think. So
yeah, they got the Crows.
So my theory of midfielders scoring well against Adelaide didn't really work out last week, but I think Neil's a bit better than Paddy Cripps in that department. But that means I won't have enough money to get Danger. So, I mean, I could wait 2 or 3 weeks, and as you say, Dan, maybe CCJ gains enough in value and Danger doesn't go up too much and I can make the jump in a few weeks. The other one that has come across the radar in the last few days, who's even cheaper than Danger and getting cheaper still, so that sort of 30, 40K gap, he would definitely help me out there, is Rowan Marshall. So he's 464K, scored in the 60s in his first game back from injury. We know what he did last year. He'd be a pretty handy, I definitely had him in my team in the preseason. If he could stay fit and stay on the park, he could be some handy ruck insurance if I did go down to a ruck forward in my R3 spot to give me a bit of ruck coverage as well. You've been a Rowan Marshall owner in the past, Dan Batten, I think. What are your thoughts on him? I am a bit nervous about the fact that he's only ever played about 2 or 3 games in a row this year before going out with another foot problem.
I don't think I actually ever have owned him, but I nearly owned him early this year before the injury. That was when I forgot to trade out Josh Dunkley on the Thursday night there that week. But yeah, obviously Marshall, a ruck forward, fairly cheap, coming up against Brodie Grundy this week. So you'd think that they'd probably ease him into the game again. I think he only had about 67 or so % game time against the Tigers, and he was playing against not exactly the best ruck outfit in the competition there. So
Samson right.
Yeah. One of the more memorable debuts for the wrong reasons, unfortunately for poor Samson. But yeah, after that, he has Oscar McInerney at the Gabba, which, he hasn't been the strongest ruckman in the comp and does give up some big scores at times. So he's certainly one to watch, Rowan Marshall. I'd probably watch another couple of weeks, though. I think you can probably afford to, considering his break-even at 162 this week. You might be able to snap him up for 430, 400, or even low 400s in 2 or 3 weeks. And once you see a good score from him, just on Danger, I was one of the ones who jumped on Danger last week. I was going to wait a little bit because I'm a little bit tight for cash at the moment, waiting for the likes of a Tom Highmore, CCJ, and even a Cody Waitman to rise in price a bit more. But yeah, it's I think there were certainly signs where Danger, looked like he was going to blow the game apart, but there were also times where he was rested forward and didn't have much impact or used the ball pretty poorly. I think he's starting to work the legs over a bit more. We might see some better scores from him now, especially with Geelong's run. They've got Essendon at Cardinia Park round 16, then got Carlton down there. So there's a couple of games. They've got Carlton at the MCG at this stage. Obviously, that could change with the COVID venue changes. But yeah, it's I think for 495k, you're not really going to get too much better for Danger. So if you have the cash already there, I'd say it's certainly and you haven't finished your forward line, it's certainly a solid move. But at the same time, if you've got Coleman Jones at maybe F6, F7, you could loophole him on the Thursday night, see how he goes, and then potentially trade someone else out if he scores poorly, which obviously Dan Bagala is hoping doesn't happen.
Boys, what's our take on Danger versus Rowan Marshall and the price? Obviously, I think Rowan Marshall comes with some inherent risk, as a lot of players do that we're bringing in this year, because we're sort of compromising our cash generation. We can get, say, Dangerfield at 500 or Marshall at 430, 440 in a week or two, versus how important that money is to have in case there's an injury down the line and we want some flexibility with who we can bring in. Do you guys use that as a tiebreaker at all between whether you would go Danger or Rowan Marshall now, just having that 50, 60 grand extra on the bench in case you need it down the line? Or do you think worry about those problems when they come?
I don't know, Josh. Yeah, it's a great question, because I'm thinking about it with the rookies this week as well. And I've got the option, because I'm looking at getting Brodie Grundy back for Matthew Flynn, and then I've got 2 rookies sitting there, like Lockie Bramble, who's probably going to average 45 to 50, but is 102k, against Jeremy Sharp, who looked pretty good, like he's played a few more seasons in the AFL now. You'd think Gold Coast is probably going to give him a half-decent run now until the end of the season, even though he hasn't been in that team. And he came back in and had 20 disposals and 8 marks against North Melbourne on the weekend and scored mid-70s. So probably looks a guy that you would be more comfortable with having at M9 or M10 if you needed some cover. But he's 141k as opposed to 102k. And $39,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it might be the difference between settling for someone in a sideways trade that you use to cover an injured premium in the last couple of rounds of the season, instead of getting to an absolute top dog that you might win you a prelim final or a grand final in KFC Supercoach. So, yeah, I'm still torn on that. I'm probably more likely to go to Bramble. But it's an even, I think, I don't know what you think, Al, but I feel like it's an even trickier question when you're considering a primo as well, and especially when you're weighing up sort of Danger and Marshall, because even though Danger's had been so durable through so much of his career, like there has to be some chance, doesn't there, if Geelong locks away top 4, with the fact that he's missed so much of this season, that he gets managed. And then I'd be worried about Rowan Marshall being in a similar case as well. Like if St Kilda gets knocked out of the race for finals, do they let him have surgery on his foot to make sure he's right to go at the start of pre-season? And then you run out of trades and you've got Rowan Marshall stuck in your forward line or as one of your 2 rucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to know. I'm trying to judge what clubs might do. We were talking in our chat the other day about there was some suggestions out there that Melbourne's in such a good position. They've had players who've played nearly every game, all their stars, so they can really start to manage guys potentially for the run home, which would be a massive headache for super coaches if the likes of Max Gawn or Clayton Oliver, Stephen May, all these guys start getting some general soreness. But I don't know how much you can weigh in with your decision making, because it's so hard to know to predict what clubs are going to do. But in terms of the cash, I totally agree with your point there about that 30 or 40K being really crucial, because that's exactly where I'm in this week, where, like I said, I can make a couple of trades and, maybe get danger in the midfield, and that would leave me like 530 to spend in the midfield. Get danger as a forward. And then, the difference between, Lockie Neal at 575, and there's a couple of guys sort of around that price, and then down to 530, it's very hard to find someone around there. And the one that I sort of was scrolling through the names and clicked on, and I was like, oh, maybe this guy's going better than I thought, because he's, he's certainly on my radar in the preseason, is someone like Dyson Heppel, who amazingly hasn't gone below 85 all year, and he's averaging about 99. But, do I really want him sitting at M8, instead of Patrick Cripps? He's probably good for 10, 15 points extra a week, but, it's sort of not exactly a massive upgrade compared to, if you can get that extra 30K. So I would definitely be taking that into account. But, having said that, I'm in the position where, you play around with different possible trades. And if I just went straight down from Flynn this week to a rookie, I would have enough money to turn Cripps into Marcus Bontempelli. Now, that would mean just forget the forward line. I'm not going to get danger. I'm not going to get Marshall. I'll just play with CCJ at F6 for however long, and then maybe in a month he's gone up enough that I can look to trade him. Dan Bagala, is that something you would consider as a sort of president of the Bont fan club?
Chasmo Bagala.
It's funny.
Chasmo.
I absolutely love the Bont. Everyone knows I love the Bont. Like, he's one of my favourite players. As I said, he's 6'4". I'm 6'4". He played 150 games with AFL. I was actually at Hackettleman Football Club, but I just think that he's seriously. I've never seen a player that I think is emphatically 5-6 points ahead in the Brownlow. I just think this guy has had so many amazing performances where he's literally lit the game up. He's gone 3-3 against West Coast, halftime at Marvel, round 3, turned the game on its head. This time around, he adds 100 points up to halftime. 2 shots at goal, monstering Elliot Yeo, like one of the best performances of the year in sloppy conditions. In your case, Al, I just think that you do need to make a sizable upgrade there. Like, you need to add 30, 40 points per week to that particular average you've got there. And I think you've got to go ultra premium. Clayton Oliver's very discounted now, 623. Yes, he's got Matt DeBoer. So next week he could be 580, 590, whatever it needs to be. But I feel like what we've got now in Bont is what we had a month ago in Clary. Clary came off his 200. He was 720 grand. Everyone thought he was the most in vogue player. But Bont is built here sustainably. He's sustainably getting better and better each week, whereas Clary just had that monster performance against Adelaide. So back to Josh's question regarding that use of the capital, like the 60 grand. In that particular example, I would always prefer to go danger because he's a workhorse. And then back to Tim's example there, I think with Geelong pressing really hard for top 4, I think a player like Danger is frothing for more opportunity to play between now and the conclusion of the year. I think he wants to play as many games as he can, maybe on managed minutes, try and get as much experience there, because the interview he did down at the Cattery 2 weeks ago, he said it's all about now getting as much game time as I can between now and finals footy. So he'll be roaring to go in 2 to 3 weeks. I saw signs in him the other day, like when he gets the arms up above his head trying to clunk marks and diving on packs. That's vintage Dangerfield. But I would always opt for the player like a Danger versus a guy with plantar fascia. Like a foot injury like that is so dangerous. Like he gets a hot spot mid-game, he's off the ground, he's on 20 points, and you've got that at R2. So I'm too nervous to pick Marshall despite the obvious opportunity that looks there on price, because I'm very weary of running around underdone with a susceptible injury like that. So I'd go Danger in that instance. And on your note, Al, I love Bond. Lock him in.
Joshy, what are your thoughts? Like Bont's over 700K now. I think it might stand to be corrected, but I believe it might be the first time in his career he's ever reached that sort of price stratosphere. And probably for people like Dan and I that don't have Dane Zorko, who is comfortably the number 1 forward of this year as well, but is now close to 660K, which, again, a crazy price for a guy that for most of his career has averaged about 95, 100 points a game. Like, do you just have to bite the bullet and get these guys in, or should you be looking for a bit of value with someone, for example, like you found Ben Cunnington at a really good price, and he's been in great form for your team for at least the last month, maybe 6 weeks or so now?
Yeah, to answer the Bont question, a couple of podcasts I do listen to for any sport, any fantasy stuff, says at the end of the day it's a game, and if you enjoy watching that player, get them in. And for this year, Brayshaw is a guy I could have traded out over the buys, but enjoy watching him play, and he's my only reason to watch Fremantle every weekend, so kept him in. And the Bont is an absolute star, so you'd have to push me pretty hard to get me off the to get Bont in that situation. And it obviously depends on Bont plus what, and then you throw that against what the other option is. But man, he is a star, and I hope he wins the Brownlow, and he's that good to watch. Cunnington, yeah. So he's a guy that I looked at last year as well. It feels like when I'm scrolling through the players looking for value, I'm like a guy that sits there and goes through the dollars per point and goes from like the cheapest and works my way up to just pick out half a dozen players for me to keep an eye on how they track over the next couple of weeks. And Cunnington's come across my radar the last few years. He always seems to be undervalued at some point. And last year, I think he had a lot of injuries as well. Missed a lot of the game last year. And then when he came on this year, had a slow start, and then I think his first, he went back to back, very close to 120s. And I think I was like, okay, he's had a delayed preseason, but he's on. He never gets tagged, I don't think, because from my understanding, he looks like he's the slowest man on an AFL field. So no one who can run all day is going to run with him. So wanted to bring him in when he was in the 400s, and then didn't have it in me. And then waited till he went, I think, 130, 140 again, and decided to bring him in, and he's been brilliant. He would have averaged 115 or so off a 500k price average over the last 4 or 5 rounds that I've had him. So that's been awesome.
Yeah, so to put that into perspective, Al, since he was round 7, 427k was the lowest you could have got Ben Cunnington. He scored below 110 once since then, and has gone above 125. 5 of his last 7 or 8, I think. So yeah, he's one of the 4 midfielders in the comp now, just flying under the radar as he normally does. And I know the Phantoms flagged Jai Simpkin as sort of a potential real pod trade in as well this week too, because North Melbourne's midfield, it's been interesting because we're looking at matchups and trying to find, I don't know, good captaincy options and the like, and thinking that teams are going to absolutely dominate against North Melbourne. And I think Bont and McRae go up against North Melbourne this week, so they'll be pretty popular vice captain or captaincy choices. But North's midfield in the last 4 to 6 weeks has been really, really good. They took Hawthorn apart, and since then, Jai Simpkin and Cunnington and these guys have been scoring well. LDU was absolutely enormous against Gold Coast on the weekend as well. So I don't think we're giving North Melbourne's midfield sort of enough credit, even though they haven't had all that many wins this year. Some of their midfielders have been quite good, and that's clearly showing through in the Supercoach averages of guys like Cunnington and Simpkin in the past month or so.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't watch enough footy, but what's changed? I don't watch North Melbourne game in, game out, and I know enough about footy, but fantasy scores reflect, or Supercoach scores reflect an impact on the game. So what has changed for these guys to have such a big impact over the last month compared to the first couple of weeks of the year?
I have this theory, Josh. I don't know what it is. Jai Simpkin should be the first player signed up if they bring in a Tassie team, because if he goes to Tassie and something happens, he turns into, I talk about Gary Ablett in 2010, his numbers, if you look at what he does in Launceston or what he does in Hobart, he seems to just love going down to the cold down there in Tassie. So I wonder whether it's more continuity. Simpkin hadn't played a lot in the midfield with Ben Cunnington before. Well, Simpkin went in last year, didn't he? When, as you said, Cunnington played 3 or 4 games of the year last year. So they start to learn a bit more about each other. LDU is really similar. He only went in there for the last maybe 3 or 4 games of last year, and then he's been unleashed this year a bit as well. And then you probably think they're bringing, David Noble's coaching methods probably start to hit home a little bit more as well, don't they, after sort of half a season or so. But again, it was only Gold Coast, and we know how the Suns are sort of struggling a bit at the moment as well. But yeah, definitely, if you want a real pod, there's some good options there at North Melbourne to look at for the run home.
And that leads us in nicely, Tim. You mentioned their captains and vice captains with the Bulldogs coming up against North, and then you mentioned Gold Coast struggling. So obviously they play the Tigers on Thursday night, and we know Richmond did not have a great game last week, but Dusty scored in the 90s still. So would you back him to? I mean, surely they're going to have to respond against the Suns. Dan Batten, have you had a look at captains for this week as an early steer yet?
Yeah, I have had a little bit of a look. I probably would be avoiding the Tigers, though. I mean, Dusty could have a massive game against the Suns, but often for for games against lower sides, he does tend to switch off a bit. He was looking like going potentially 120 against the Saints, and then sort of switched off in that second half. That was actually when the game was fairly on the line, though, and until that last quarter where it was pretty miserable for them. But yeah, in terms of other options, it's pretty tough. I might go potentially a VC Gawn. I've been in the position where I've been putting the C on Gawn the last couple of weeks, with D's playing a bit later in the round, and my loopholes playing early in the round, so sort of had to bite the bullet with an early VC. But I think Max Gawn up against the Giants is probably going to be either Matt Flynn and Briggs, or potentially Flynn and Mumford, or even Briggs and Mumford. So who knows how they will line up this week, but I think Gawn could have a reasonable game, and it's probably worth risking the VC at least on him. And then if you've got the likes of McRae and Bond on the Sunday, that's a very tempting matchup there against North. Although Bond actually has his lowest score of the year against North Melbourne last game, when they won by 170 points or whatever it was, when Josh Bruce kicked it back then. But obviously North are a better side now. But yeah, I'd certainly be licking my lips if I had Marcus Bontempelli, just slam the C on him and lock him in. But I'll probably go with Max Gawn into McRae.
So Al, the Max Gawn captaincy thing is becoming a real discussion point. So since round 7, he scored 63 in round 7, and he's only gone above 125, which is your captaincy mark for most coaches, once since round 7. So
Yeah, wow.
it needs to be a genuine, just like if you're looking at Melbourne, is Clayton Oliver now a better captaincy or vice captaincy option than Max Gawn? Because, and I don't think it's Max's fault in a way, because Luke Jackson has just become such an important part of that D's team, and is spending a fair bit of time playing through the middle as well now. And now we're hearing footy pundits coming out and saying Max Gawn should play more forward to rest in the second half of the year. Max Gawn should have a rest at different times in the second half of the year, which would be absolutely disastrous for us. But like, Josh, what do you think of sort of Max Gawn, his form, and whether it should make us think twice about making him captain or vice captain now?
Yeah, a lot of my thoughts around vice captaincies. What would I be happier? What pill can I swallow if it goes wrong? So Maxi's a pill that I'm happy to swallow. Quote that. Maxi's a pill that I'm happy to swallow if things go pear-shaped. But if I get a little bit too funky, like we spoke about, Clary, and Clary gets tagged, and that's not something that I have thought about or thought he could play through, or like I just had a quick glance then. There are a couple of tough matchups this week, or we spoke about North Melbourne doing better against McRae. These kinds of things. Maxi, regardless, is someone that I'm happy to cop if things go pear-shaped. And I would be as angry or as sad as I would be angry if he crushed it and I didn't have a VC or a C on him in any week. So with that in mind, I generally try to VC him where possible, and I'll probably do that this week into McRae, much like what Dan said. Like I've got Tuke Miller playing on Friday, another pod. Tuke playing first game of the round against Richmond. Probably going to bang out somewhere between 115 and 130, which is nice. I like to play out my weekend throughout, so that it's a nice score to have on Friday night, and then decide how my score's going through the week, whether I defend or attack. But inevitably he might get 111, and then I'm not going to know what to do. So, but yeah, back to Maxi. I'm keen as where I can to have the VC on him, and then if he doesn't do so well, then that's okay. But I think it becomes a bit trickier when he's the last game of the round, like he did 2 weeks ago. I had the C on him last game of the round, and he was 40 at halftime, and I was shedding tears. And then I think he scraped together 110. I'm not sure what you guys think.
Well, look, Dan Begala just in our chat has thrown in Maxi has a pretty good record against GWS by the looks of it.
Yeah, he loves. It was typically he flies up to Manuka Oval and plays at the plays against Mumford, and he loves Mumford. Everyone thinks he's this big, scary ruckman, but Gawn puts him to the sword every single time. I always watch it. He's too nimble around the ground. He's too strong at the contest, and I love the notion that Josh has got there. You got to sort of give the highest scoring player at least the right to have a crack at the VC, and I think that's what you've got to do. GWS, all due respect to Briggs and Flynn, they are 1 and 2 year players into their career, probably haven't even played 25 games between them. So I think if given the chance, which we do this weekend, an early VC is great. You've got Brockman, you've got Keanu Reeves as the potential captaincy if he does go big. So that's the way I look at it. And the other thing I like there from Josh is keeping that bird in the hand. You've got to let the weekend unfold, determine how you're progressing against everyone else, see how the market's performing, and then pull the trigger. In the last few weeks, I've just taken some very safe captaincies, 120s, 118s, like just lock them in, put them in. It's better than getting a mid-game injury that can almost ruin your round. So captaincy will go to one of McRae, Bont, or Steele. I feel like Steele's really strapped the cape on. Like he's really become the man of Steele recently. His last 3 games have been fantastic. He was well and truly en route to about 160 against Richmond on Friday night before, I think Jack Graham tried to make a run at him. And I think one thing we don't know about Steele is he's amazing at the contest, but he's got an engine I didn't realise. Like he just motors around the ground non-stop without blowing a gasket at all. So Steele could be a really good pod captain if Gawn fails, which I don't think he will, because he's playing Collingwood, which is maybe he gets Pendlebury running it, doing a run with role. But I think Steele's a nice pod if Gawn doesn't get the job done against Mumford and Sons, you could say.
You remember last year, Begala, I think Shane Mumford just spent most of the night trying to whack Max Gawn in the back of the head, and Max racked up about 180 points. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case again. Now, Josh, just before we wrap up, mate, great to have you on, and hopefully I know you're up there in lockdown in New South Wales at the moment, so hopefully you and all our listeners around the country that are in that unfortunate situation at the moment are keeping safe and keeping well. But we can't get you on without sort of asking you for some cricket intel, because KFC Supercoaches love to plan months out, and we need to find out what the whispers are in BBL land. Who we should have on our radar, and who's going to be sort of who's going to be the Tanveer Sanger that really breaks out, the great cheapie, or who we're going to find, even if it's from the Renegades or one of the other teams. It's going to that should be in our Supercoach BBL teams in a few months' time.
Yeah, there's a guy, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, out of Adelaide. He's caused us the last few years, Rashid Khan. I think he's going to be a good young player if anyone can afford to get Rash in. No, this is a tricky one. I've got literally 2 pages worth of notes here on AFL Supercoach, and I've got one line for BBL smoking because I couldn't think of any. Tim David from the Hobart Hurricanes is a guy, I'm not sure where he finished price-wise last year, probably pretty well because he had a bit of a breakout, but he's doing pretty well in the Pakistan Super League that's just finished up, I think, which is his first overseas tournament. So big hitting, tall, strapping lad, looks a bit like Luke Jackson, could play half forward a bit in the ruck. Big boy, hits a long ball, and hopefully doesn't hit me for too many. He's one, depending on his price. And then go back to the Sydney Thunder factory. So we saw Ollie Davies and Tanveer Sanger break out last year. Having worked at Cricket New South Wales up until very recently, there's 6 or 7 kids around the same age group that are all absolute stars, and most of them play or are contracted with the Sydney Thunder. So Baxter Holt, who we've seen a little bit of before, to wicketkeeper batter. Matt Gilkes, he's played a bit, but he's going to break out at some point. He's got the most natural flair of any of these guys. Jason Sanger, who we've seen a little bit of, is another one. So there's a couple of guys there that I think if it's not this year, it's going to be very soon that'll break out. And they've got the great coach in Trevor Bayliss, who's won tournaments all around the world, also a Penrith boy, coaching them this year. So if anyone's going to be able to get the best out of them, it'll be him. So go back to the Sydney Thunder well if in doubt.
Oh, now the guys want me to mention as well. I thought not having Dane Zorko was enough torture, and I've whinged about him a lot in the last 45 minutes or so. But the guys want me to mention as well that you've managed to somehow turn Shannon Hearn's career around. Like, I thought he was cooked, and I thought I cooked him midway through last year when I traded him in instead of Jake Ward. Yes. But you have found Shannon Hearn back into form. I think he's averaging 100 plus in maybe the last month or so too. So he's the other pod that you've got in your AFL team at the moment.
Yeah, I had to get him thrown in there. Shannon's a guy that I actually played a bit of cricket against when we were 15, believe it or not. He was a cricket prodigy, as they say. I've heard them say on the coverage before, but I played a little. We're the same age, believe it or not. We've both got the same hairline. Shannon was a very good cricketer, so a name that always is on my radar. And then I had a quick look this year, same deal, went to the dollars per point just to see who was floating around down there. And Shannon Hearn was a guy that had gone, I don't have the numbers in front of me, 110, 120, 105 or something, first 3 games. 2 or 3 of them might have been at Optus. And then he got injured. And an early game injury, like single-digit points, I think, which dragged his price right down. West Coast teams or non-Melbourne teams traditionally sort of off the radar a little bit more than most guys. And I just looked at that and thought, like previous Supercoach, top 6 defender 2 or 3 years ago, and last year fell off the radar, but saw his return to score and again thought we're going to have to find compromise guys. What pill am I happy to swallow in terms of compromise? And a sort of fallen premium from a couple of years ago who plays a clutch role at his club, who's captain, excellent foot skills, scores well at home. It's sort of like I can get around that. If he averages 90 for the rest of the year, so be it. And he's done a little bit better than that, and he's averaging. Take out his injury game, he's 400 and something thousand still, averaging about 108 if you take out that game. So in a year where you're just looking for a little bit of point of difference and a little bit of value, he's one that stood out for me. And I think the last 3 rounds, I've had him for 3 or 4 rounds, and I think he's got 100 most times. So
well, for my team last year, he averaged about 30, Josh. So I'm glad he's done.
And you would have paid 600 grand for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was about 550, and he traded him out for about 380k. So that was what's reverse arbitrage? Is there a term for that, Pagala? Because that was the absolute definition of reverse arbitrage.
Not sure, but probably.
He's still only 475k, Shannon. So if you need a cheap defender,
get him. I might get him. Who knows?
I've seen a few people. Most people sort of the forward line is the area to finish off, but you could. That move is still open for potentially to swing Laird maybe into the midfield to finish a midfield spot and then bring in a cheap defender. It could be another way of finishing your team. But as we say, everybody's dealing with different issues. But yeah, pods is a good way to do it. And, you mentioned Tuke Miller as well. He's been a great pick. So no surprise you're having a good year. Josh, thank you for jumping on. It's been absolutely awesome. Good luck for the rest of your Supercoach year. And up in Sydney, we're thinking of you guys. We've been through it all before, but hopefully we'll be out of lockdown soon. And we'll see what happens with the AFL fixture. There's some more news coming out today, I think. So we'll stay on top of all of that. And Dan, Tim, everybody, thanks for coming on. It's been another great chat. Good luck, everybody out there with your trades, and we'll catch you again very soon.